Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. This is Bayloric TV Boxing Channel. And of course, it's another crossover show. I have with me today the man behind Boxing Gossip, one of my favourite YouTube channels for boxing and anything else really, because the good thing I like about my guest today is that he just talks not only about boxing, but about general life and things that happen in boxing, happen in life, which makes it far more interesting. There are some characters out there that focus wholly on boxing, and I've loved them, and it's great what they do. But I also like a bit of variety, and this man brings variety. So, Tom is your name? Am I correct?
Yeah, Tom from Boxing Gossip. Thanks very much indeed for having me on, Ingram.
Excellent stuff, Tom. So, listen, got a great channel. So, first of all, I've got to say, anybody who's watching this now, subscribe to Boxing Gossip, a great channel. You'll see for yourself. Tom has a dilemma at the moment, so if you can get on there, check out his video about his dilemma and his friend or his mate who wants to get into boxing. Check it out. It's a great story. You'll get a good laugh, and I know there's lots of boxing experts out there who love to put their 2p piece in. Right. So let's talk first about how you got into this whole YouTube thing.
Yeah, I guess I was always keen to express my opinions on certain boxers and boxing events. I think I recognised that sometimes my opinion differed from the normal opinions out there. You know, you look at very hyped up fighters, your Anthony Joshua's, your David Price, and all of the, not yourself, Ingram, but all of the mainstream media, if you like, the YouTube channels, all jumping on the same bandwagons time and time again. And I think initially I stuck a video up, probably about 2 years ago now, 18 months ago, just stuck one random video up, just expressing some sort of opinion that was probably contrary to the norm. And straight away it got a few views, got a few comments, and I think I quite enjoyed the sort of community aspect of it. I've learned a lot from being on YouTube. I've spoken to a lot of very knowledgeable people, more knowledgeable than myself. And I've been educated on the sport and certain fighters. And I think it's just sort of grown and developed from there, really.
Okay. Since being on YouTube, what's the most valuable lesson you've learnt being a YouTube creator?
I think that's a good question. I think when I initially came online, I was perhaps slightly stronger with my opinions. I kind of would state a fighter would win a fight as a matter of fact. And now it's easy to pick fighter A over fighter B, isn't it? But when you put up a video and it's got 100 views in it or something, and then your guy gets knocked out, and then everyone comes back and comments about what a fool you made of yourself. And I think I've kind of realised that in a fight anything can happen.
Absolutely.
A really low-level fighter can go up against Vladimir Klitschko. There can be a cut, there can be a broken hand, there could be a dislocated shoulder like we saw last night. Anything can happen in a fight. And I think it's kind of made me realise that nothing is ever 100% in boxing, and anyone's got a chance against anyone else in a sort of fighting environment.
Interesting. When you say that you look at fights and you look at the comments that are on YouTube, and you also must know the ones out there that are wholly dedicated to fighters, so much so that they can't see their fighters' weaknesses, they can't see that the fighters fighting low-level opposition. It seems to be quite a trend today in boxing, especially in YouTube community, that, and this is not for boxing people who've got some sort of history in the sport and have been watching this boxing game for 20, 30 years. I'm talking about these newbies who've just got into boxing and like to call out boxers who won a few fights and then put them in legendary status. One of the people that I have to put in this category is Gennady Golovkin. Gennady Golovkin is a good fighter. great? I'm not so sure. And where this guy has fought, let's say, mediocre opposition. You know, when I say mediocre opposition, if you're going to talk about Gennady Golovkin with Marvin Hagler, Sugar Ray Leonard, Thomas Hearns, Nigel Benn, James Toney, and people say, oh yeah, Gennady would knock all those guys out. And then you say, okay, all right. So you believe Gennady would knock all those guys out. You go, so then let's look at Gennady's record. And then we look on the record and we see Martin Murray, Gil, and you're going for the record. You say to yourself, William, or not Willie, what's his name? Willie Monroe, and you're going to yourself, well, hold on a second. Hearns fought Hagler, Leonard, Duran, Barkley. He fought great fighters, but you're saying that GGG can go in there and just stop all these guys. I'm like, whoa, hold on a second. You know, and if you're getting tagged by guys like Willie Monroe, we kind of, there's levels. As you move up in levels, your punch may not have the same effect. We saw it took him 11 rounds to get rid of Martin Murray. Everyone says he's this devastating puncher, but he's knocking guys out in 4, 5, 6 rounds. Whereas you look at someone like Julian Jackson, when he hit you, boom, one shot, you were out cold, you weren't getting up. Nigel Benn's another. He usually you whack and you go over. But even when Nigel moved up in class, he wasn't knocking guys out the same way. But somehow Gennady's going to knock everybody out. It's quite sad to watch. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I've noticed this a lot, Ingram. And in my experience, it relates to fighters who carry a lot of power. I've seen it with Deontay Wilder. I've seen it with Anthony Joshua recently. What it is people who are general sports fans turn on the TV and they see this guy who's perceived as knocking everyone out, and they become sort of infatuated with the power. The truth about Gennady Golovkin is he's never beaten a top 5 middleweight. Martin Murray, Daniel Gil, they're there or thereabouts. They're solid top 10 level guys. They're not at the top of the division. Now, I know Triple G's probably being ducked. It's not that he's outwardly looking to avoid fighters, but his resume just isn't the quality of the guys you've mentioned earlier on in your piece there. I read online today that Peter Manfredo Jr. has been weighed up as his next opponent, which would be horrific if true. Horrific. And I think the other thing people need to learn about Triple G is this guy went 8 rounds with Curtis Stevens. This guy went 11 rounds with Martin Murray. I mean, I'm not saying he can't punch, but if you're going 11 rounds with Martin Murray, there's a very strong argument that somebody a weight division above, like Andre Ward or Carl Frost, is going to go 12. All these people who say Triple G is just going to knock out Andre Ward in 3 rounds, I mean, did they not see Murray going 11 rounds at 160? It frustrates me.
Let me hold you there. But there is that argument that GGG, who's taking his time, he was allowing the rounds to go. He could have stopped the fight in the first round. He could have stopped it in the first 30 seconds. Didn't you know that?
I've also heard that he let Willie Monroe Jr. hit him because to feel a man's fist on his chin. It gets him a bit motivated. All of this stuff is playground stuff. Like I know Martin Murray and Willie Monroe Jr. couldn't, people say they couldn't crack an egg, but the truth is these are professional fighters. Nobody, Martin Murray, he's known as a light puncher, but nobody wants to get smacked in the mouth by him. Not even Triple G.
Yeah. But here's another example. I remember the story about Pacquiao when Pacquiao got knocked out by Marquez, and he faked the knockout. He didn't really get knocked out. He was laying there, but he wasn't really knocked out. It was like he wanted to give Marquez the win because he felt sorry for Marquez. And you hear stuff like that thinking, how right field is that? It's like, what?
Absolutely. Boxing fans love their conspiracies. I've been reading about Al Heyman texting Luis Collazo mid-fight telling him to pull out today. It's just ridiculous, some of the thing that...
I know you say that about Collazo. Let's go straight into that. I know you talk about Collazo, but I don't know if you saw my tweets before the fight. I said I was very concerned about Keith Thurman, and I had good reason to be concerned. He gives me the same sort of concerns I had when Lennox Lewis was in his first reign as WBC World Champion. He had a fight against... His first defence was against Tony Tucker. Second defence was against... I think... Bruno.
Right.
Third defence was against... what's his name? Phil Jackson. And then the fourth defence was against Oliver McCall.
McCall,
In
yeah.
those defences he made, he didn't look spectacular. When he stopped Bruno, he almost closed his eyes and threw a winging left hook when Bruno had him backed up against the ropes. The Jackson fight was getting tagged with shots against a very limited fighter. And like George Foreman said, look, this guy needs help. He really needs help. Bruno even said in the studio in Sky, he said, look, he's going to fight McCall. He's a bull. He can't just go in there throwing him punches. Like, he's got to think about what he's doing. What do we see? We see McCall knock Lewis out. And I can see a similar pattern happen with Thurman. I think he's, as you know, I follow Thurman and I love Thurman. So it's not hating here. But it's like, you got to see the writing is on the wall. He calls himself one time. But when's the last time he knocked someone out?
Yeah, it's 3 fights now, isn't it? And it's coincided with him stepping up in class, doesn't it?
Yep.
I think he looks tight at the weight as well. I was looking at him, I was watching some pre-fight interviews he did, and he looked really drained to my eye to make
He
one
did look
more
drained.
time.
But the question is he drained because, it's the first time I've spoken to Keith, and I did talk to him a bit. It's the first time I spoke to him where he sounded generally like it was like the world was on top of him. Because all the media interview and all these people talk to this person, talk to that person, everyone's jumping on the bandwagon, the Keith Thurman bandwagon now. And it's like 3 fights ago, he was like, okay, I'm Keith Thurman and I'm looking to move myself into a better class of opposition. And, people asking the question, well, Al Heyman, what's he doing with Keith Thurman? And George Foreman III said to me, Keith Thurman needs to keep low on the radar. He needs to wait until Pacquiao and Mayweather retire.
Yeah.
And then announce himself. By that time, he would have given himself enough grounding as a fighter to have cleaned up where he needs to clean up and then make an assault to be the dominant welterweight. But what we've got now, as far as I'm concerned, is a guy that isn't ready for that elite level. Not just yet.
I agree. I think he'll get the Floyd fight next as well. I think that's a real possibility. If you think if the Floyd fight's 8, 9, 10 weeks away, it's probably just about enough time. And who else? There's not that great a list of guys now who are in the running for that fight. I don't see Khan getting it.
Defense.
That's what I mean. I think he'll be able to.
If you want to call this again, I love Keith, but if you want to call that a defense, it's not a defense. When you're on the ropes, you don't know what to do. You don't know whether you're gonna. How often do you see Keith Thurman hold a guy?
No, that's his new. This is his new nickname that he's put on Twitter, isn't it? It's not one time; it's run time. He's just kind of circles away, and he's not. He kind of fights with almost like sort of David Hay ambush style approach, doesn't he? Like tries to stay on the outside, come in, throw one punch, and then try and get out and circle around the ring. But I think he leaves himself open. And I think that a guy like Floyd won't be scared of his power. Floyd's been in there with everyone. I think Floyd will fancy that now.
And those wide punches, he's throwing punches from out here.
Yeah.
Any shots here. And when you throw wide shots like that, you leave all your kidney, your body open, everything. So when you got caught by Klatz, I'm like, well, that serves you right. It's about time. And Klatz had him in a lot of trouble. A lot of trouble.
Yeah. I thought Collazo could stop him. And to be honest, I know Floyd isn't a big puncher, but I'm not really convinced that Collazo is like a much bigger puncher than Floyd. Collazo is not a huge puncher at 147 at all. So, yeah, I think that Thurman may well get that fight. And I think the good thing is, if he loses that fight, there's no disgrace in losing to Floyd, and that could be the catalyst for him moving up to 154 maybe.
If I were Keith Thurman, I'd keep his mouth shut. I would keep his mouth shut now. He's talking himself, and he's not delivering. He's under delivering. He's under delivering and overperforming with his mouth. And I love Keith, but you're not knocking anybody out. You've put 3 subpar performances on. Against Bundu, right, he was an unknown quantity. So we could say, all right, Bundu was probably tougher than we expected. But we knew that he was a good body puncher. So I understood him not engaging with Bundu. Then he fought Guerrero, which, yes, he knocked Guerrero down, but couldn't finish him off. and then he's now fought Collazo last night. Now let's go back to that shoulder injury. Is that a problem? I mean, this last knockout was before he had the shoulder injury. So between the almost the year he had out and he's made the comeback, during that year and the comeback, I don't know what's happened, but Thurman's not punching the same way. You could say it's a level that's gone up, or is it the shoulder injury? Because I know that if you injure yourself, like I've injured myself in my foot, and I know that I don't walk on my foot the same way as I used to, because in my mind, I've got to myself, I don't want to injure my foot again. So when you're punching, before Thurman was punching boom, boom, and knocking guys over, now in his mind, is he doubting A, his punch power, and B, if I follow through, am I going to pull my shoulder again?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's impossible to know how much damage his shoulders caused, but I think certainly the rise in opposition. The other thing is, I think Keith Thurman's 26 now. Yeah, he's had a little bit of a break following on from that injury. Is it, has a bit of inactivity and another year older, has it made it harder for him to get down? Because I know I keep going back to this, but I thought he looked unhealthy. I really did.
Yeah, he did. But is he preparing right? Is his preparation the same way? Has he had enough time to prepare? I mean, you can have 10 weeks to prepare, but not with the media commitments.
Yeah. And I know I saw your video on that, your live video, and I think you made some pretty solid points about how he's having to deal with all different parties and spend so much time talking to journalists and that sort of thing, and it probably is affecting his mindset and his time in the gym, certainly. So yeah, a number of factors, but at the end of the day, he's talked his way into being in this position, so he's got to live with the consequences now, and that is a lot of attention.
Well, maybe now after the Collazo fight, he will get the enlightenment that will say, I'm not as great as I probably think I am, or maybe I need to take a look at my training schedule, or maybe I need to look at tweaking what I'm doing, because Dan Berman is a good trainer. But tell me, what has Keith Thurman done in the last 3 fights differently?
No, I mean, you're absolutely right. When I saw the Bundu fight, I was kind of impressed, because I thought to myself, we all know Keith can go and knock someone out. What I want to see him do is prove solid boxing capability against a solid enough opponent. And, he pretty much outpointed Bundu every round. So at first, I was kind of slightly impressed with that performance. But then on reflection, having seen the Guerrero fight and having seen the fight last night, I just question, can you be elite at welterweight without defence with some of the names in that division? And I don't think you can. I think Kell Brook and Amir Khan, as well as Floyd and Manny, would all have the likelihood of beating Keith based on last night's performance.
You see, the thing with my problem with people who jump on the Amir Khan bandwagon, which top quality welterweight has Khan beat?
Yeah, I mean that's a fair point, but I'll tell you what. I think Khan, in his own way, Khan did some things against Luis Collazo better than Keith Thurman.
He did. He put his. But the thing is, Khan he put his combinations together. He was in and out. He didn't stick around in the pocket too long.
Yeah.
Well, Keith's different. Keith will stay in the pocket a little too long and to stand in trade and throw big wigging shots where Khan's very straight. He's very straight down the pipe. Keith is very wide. His punches are wide.
Yeah.
You don't see Keith throw lots of straight shots. Very wide. And Khan throws flurries of punches very quickly. Well, Keith, boom, boom, boom. So he's more power-based, whereas I think Khan's more speed-based. So that suited. I think Khan looked better for that fight. But again, ask yourself the question, when you put Khan and Keith in the ring together, we know that we've not seen Khan take a proper welterweight punch yet.
Yeah.
And he was getting rocked by Chris Algieri. Let's just remember that fight. Let's not go back there. It wasn't too long ago. So, and this is the same Chris Algieri that was dropped 6 times by Manny Pacquiao. And Manny Pacquiao is not a big welterweight. So, taking those things all in, Khan still has to, he's still got Garcia problems, he's still got Prescott problems, and now he's got Brook problems.
Yeah.
He needs to clean that sort of stuff up first. So, for anybody who's jumping on the Thurman bandwagon, I wouldn't say, oh, Amir Khan. I would say to them, Khan's got to deal with Brook. Deal with your business at home.
Absolutely, I think that's a fair point. I wonder if Floyd does retire after this fight in September, and I'm
Mm.
not sure he will do. I think he'll go for 50. But if he was to retire, will this create a lot of these matches at welterweight? Or a lot of guys are positioning themselves in the Mayweather sweepstakes, as he
Yeah.
likes to call it. But will Khan Brook, will Furman Porter, will these fights all be more likely to happen when that incentive of a Mayweather fight is taken away?
Well, look, Khan's got to do something sooner rather than later. There's only
Yeah,
only so much longer you can fight powder puff punches. Eventually, you're gonna have to fight someone who digs hard again, and
yeah,
then we're gonna find out his acid test whether he really is a big 147 that can take a shot. That's what we need to discover. Um, why he's running to Keith Thurman and wants to fight Thurman and will not fight Brook is I don't know. I have no idea. Um, but you know, Khan is yet to prove to me, apart from Marcos Maidana, that he can hold the shot and stay in a fight. And even in the Marcos Maidana fight,
yeah.
some referees may have stopped that fight.
Absolutely, yeah. It
So
was yeah,
you know, for me, Keith Thurman needs. I hate to say, he needs to change of trainer.
yeah. Yeah, I can see that. I mean, it just doesn't look like he's improving. He's kind of his
Stagnant.
performance, yeah, very much so,
Needs some
very
new
much.
tools. Needs some new tools. Needs to decide whether, look, am I going to be a brawler? Am I going to be a boxer? And the other thing is, your ratio of knockouts would go down if you're always on the run. If you're now not standing and planting shots. The other question you've got to ask yourself as well: does Keith Thurman believe in his chin?
Mm, that's a good question. It's a good question. I know he's been hurt and down in fights before.
Uh huh.
Maybe he's been hurt in sparring. I don't know. He certainly seems to be calling out guys who can punch and that sort of thing. But yeah, maybe that's why he's been more of a mover when he's fought these top level guys, or higher level guys.
In one of the interviews I did with him, I said to him, it was the Chavez fight, and I said to him,
Yeah,
Keith, you're now fighting a guy who can punch, and it was quite revealing. He said to me, yeah, but who's he actually knocked out cold? And then that said to me, okay, that means that the guys you're fighting and the way you analyse your opponents are guys whether they knock people out cold or not. And
mm,
that means that you are not going to fight guys who could comatise people.
mm,
So if you're looking at guys saying, well, there's only one guy in the division that does that, and he said, you see, it was Manny Pacquiao said that it was one guy who could hit you with one shot and knock you out, was Manny Pacquiao. But not even Manny's doing that anymore.
no, no, no.
So the fact that he's even looking at opponents that way makes me think, have you got question marks about your own chin? Is something happening in sparring that's making you fight the way that you do? I mean,
Yeah,
he doesn't get dropped as much anymore, but that's because he's obviously not engaging the way he was before.
yeah. It's interesting. I guess something like that can have a deep psychological effect on a fighter if he gets hurt badly in sparring or something of that nature. And well, I guess he's in a position where at the minute he's got so much momentum that there's so much to lose, and he doesn't want to be the next hype job who gets derailed by some sort of veteran fighter, does he? But
But
yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you there.
if he doesn't make the change, it's only a matter of time before he becomes derailed.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree. He's got to show something different. Yeah,
A lot of hype has gone on to this next fight, Joshua versus Dillian White.
yeah,
I'm not excited about it, not one bit at all, because a lot of the boxing public think, yes, Joshua's going to get a test now. He's got Dillian White because Dillian White's good. Based on what? Oh, based on the amateur fight that they had so many years ago. But we know that since then, Joshua has come on. Now, I don't subscribe to him being the second best fighter in the world because he's not. No
no,
way far from it. He's a prospect, and that's what Joshua is. He's a
yeah,
prospect. He's yet to have a
absolutely.
proper test. When you look at Dillian White now, he's a guy that's been inactive and has not had enough fights for me to be going and fighting Joshua. I would like to see Dillian White fight a couple of good testing opposition, like 2-3 fights, and then fight Joshua with some momentum. Guy's got no momentum, so he fights in August. Who's he going to fight in August? Because you can't fight anybody that's going to be too challenging for the Joshua fight. But if
Yeah,
you look at Joshua, he's had a momentum. He's had a good little momentum going with him.
absolutely. I saw your bit with James Ali Basir the other day.
Yes.
He talked about this fight, and I think he made some pretty good points about Dillian needing quite a few fights to warm up. And if I understand correctly, he's done a bit of work and been in Klitschko camp with Dillian White before.
Yes.
I mean, there's a lot of positives to Dillian White. He genuinely carries big power, and Anthony Joshua's chin hasn't been tested. He seems to be a durable guy himself. He's unbeaten, and he comes with a sort of winning mentality. He's not going in there to lay down. He's got desires of his own, and that's something that no AJ opponent has had before. I've also heard, possibly on your channel, Ingram, I've heard excellent reports from the Furies about him. He seems to be a guy who's very well respected, and he's got an excellent attitude, the way he dealt with his ban. What I would say is, in my opinion, timing is not right for Dillian. He's had the incident with his trainer. He's got a hand injury. He's been inactive. And I just think that I wouldn't rule him out of the fight, because Joshua is so untested, and Dillian does carry genuine power. And I think Dillian could potentially get in Joshua's head and, drag the fight into the trenches. But I just think that Anthony Joshua at present, and I'm not sold on Joshua, but I do think he's shown more improvements and more sort of technique than Dillian White at this stage of his career.
This is not a knock on White, but he just seems more professional.
Indeed, yeah.
Joshua does. He seems more professional. I don't know much about Dillian White and his training camps and what he's doing. I like to see, for me, I like to see his training camp. I like to see who his trainer is. I like to see him more active, fighting on the circuit more. Like, if Dillian White had fought Rudenko,
yeah,
and then had fought Joshua, I could say, right, we saw Dillian White look there, he did a good 10 hard rounds against a top guy who gave Lucas Brown some issues, and and Huey Fury fought him there, and you could see some sort of lines and parallels. Say, okay, what sort of quantity is Dillian White as a professional heavyweight, not an amateur, as a professional heavyweight? What quantity is he? Yes, he seems like he could take a good shot as a pro.
Yeah.
He seems like he's a heavy puncher as a pro. He seems a lot of things, but unknown quantity, because how good is Dillian White?
Yeah, I mean, the best opponent, is it Nascimento is probably the best opponent he's beaten, and, he's low level, isn't he?
Yeah, but I think Eddie Chambers beat him, and I think Tyson Fury beat Nascimento many years ago.
Yeah, the one thing I would say about that is Nascimento took Chambers to distance. I think, and this is a long time ago, I think Nascimento took Fury 5 rounds.
Yeah.
And I think Dillian White knocked him out in 2, which is a suggestion of, like, pretty decent power, especially when you combine the feedback from guys like Peter Fury, guys like James Ali Basir. But, you are right. I mean, it's in a way, it's the same that John McDermott fight never happened, because I know McDermott is very limited himself, but he's a guy at a certain level. A measuring stick.
And let's not forget, McDermott gave Fury 2 good fights. Even if it wasn't out of shape, or a Tyson Fury who wasn't as dedicated to boxing as he is now, he still gave Tyson issues.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
That'd be interesting. It would be nice to see Dillian White fight the old heavyweights, like him fight against a Matt Skelton and fight against a Michael Sprott. That's sort of a run you'd like to see. You say, okay, let's see how you do against Sprott. Let's see how you do against Skelton. Yes, I know you're meant to beat them, but hey, Joshua did the same thing. So if the same rule can work for Joshua, it can work for Dillian White.
I mean, this is where Dillian White is this is why it's unfortunate he doesn't have a major promoter behind him, because those guys are expensive, aren't they? To bring in a name like Matt Skelton. Matt Skelton isn't a better fighter than Sam Sexton, but Matt Skelton will cost a lot more money because of the name.
Yeah.
So I guess that's where Dillian's been slightly handicapped by not having that major support.
I thought he was going to sign. I actually thought he was going to go and sign with Eddie Hearn. I really thought it was going to happen. But
it's interesting. Yeah, I mean, it's hard for Dillian White. It's hard for Eddie Hearn, because I guess Dillian White's future depends on this fight coming up, doesn't it? I mean,
why haven't a major promoter signed with Dillian White?
I think he said that he's been made quite a few offers, and that he's turned them down because he wanted to keep himself a free agent for this kind of fight that's coming up. Now, I don't know whether that's true or not, but you'd certainly think someone would snap him up. You'd think someone like Frank or Kelly Maloney, should I say? He signed Gary Cornish, didn't he? I mean, wouldn't Dillian White have been a better acquisition? So it's it's a difficult one, but you'd think a heavyweight is what, 13, 14 and 0, knocking everyone out. You think that they would get some interest in them, definitely.
Absolutely. So you think to yourself now, but then the other thing is, from an Eddie Hearn standpoint, what is it you're seeing in Dillian White that makes you so sure that you can arrange Dillian White as the next fight after Gary Cornish? Do you think it's that easy a fight?
What, as in Joshua Cornett?
Yeah, no, Joshua, White.
I think Joshua White, in my mind, I've got it like 80-20 to Joshua.
Yeah,
I think the problem with Joshua is he's so, he's such an unknown commodity,
yeah,
namely stamina and chin,
yes,
that you can never call him like 100% favourite. But he seems to have like a lot better jab than Dillian White. He seems to be a slightly more skilled technician. He seems to do the basics a bit
professionalism.
better.
We go back there again. Professionalism.
Yeah, professionalism.
And
Yeah,
professionalism and more time to polish up.
absolutely, absolutely. So, what I do think though is that Dillian White. There's certain things I see on Joshua. I just think Anthony Joshua is a guy who's very reliant on range. Yeah, I don't see him as being someone who's gonna want to have a fight in a phone booth. I don't necessarily see him as someone who's gonna want to spend a whole night in a chess match with the jab. I kind of see him as someone who enjoys that three-quarter range, opponent backed up to the ropes. He can kind of tee off, be the big man in there. And I think Dillian White, and to a lesser extent Derek Chisora, is kind of the kind of guy who can, they're unpleasant to fight. They're not going to give you your time. They're not going to give you your space. They're going to be in your face. They're going to be on your chest. They're going to be throwing, punches from strange angles. I think that kind of guy could unsettle Anthony Joshua potentially. We'll have to see how he copes with it, I guess.
Absolutely, absolutely. Another big fight that's around the corner. Scott Quigg against what's the gentleman's name again?
Kiko Martinez.
Kiko Martinez.
Yeah.
A dangerous fight. Dangerous fights. I'd like to know the percentage of fights that Joe Gallagher's wins when it's not a 90-10 fight.
That's a good. He gets a lot of stick at the minute, Joe Gallagher, doesn't he?
Well, he made a statement the other day that doesn't help. He said that if he had Paul Smith in his corner from day one, Paul Smith would have been a world champion.
Yeah.
The comment,
Yeah.
the response on Twitter was, "Yeah, like you create a lot of world champions anyway."
Absolutely. Isn't his he's got that. Isn't his slogan for his gym like "Home of Champions" or something like that? It's this.
I call it the home of the 90-10s.
Home of the 90-10s, yeah.
You know, 90 because I'm always fascinated to hear Joe Gallagher in the corner when his fighters are in an evenly matched fight or in a fight where his fighter is not the favourite to win. And I never have heard that. It always sounds he's stuck in the other person's corner. I never get to hear Joe Gallagher in those fights, or he seems very quiet in those fights.
Yeah.
Like big high profile fight with Paul Smith and Arthur Abraham.
Yeah.
You could see where Smith he was doing well. In the first fight, he was going to Abraham's body and he was hurting Abraham to the body.
Yeah.
Then he suddenly stopped doing that. I'm like, well, what was the advice Gallagher was telling Smith?
Yeah. Why he was having such success? No, I agree with you. Yeah.
So this fight against Kiko Martinez, I really want to know how good Gallagher is. I mean, I've never seen any of these guys come into a fight not in shape.
Yeah.
These guys are always in shape. They're always in good condition. So there's no doubts about that. But it's what Scott Quigg can do against a guy who is there or thereabouts one of the best in the world.
Yeah, I think Scott Quigg, he really does have a weak resume. I mean, Eddie Hearn talks about that Salinas guy. Like, Salinas is some kind of, top 5 fighter, doesn't he? But, he's not in the level of a Kiko Martinez or of a, Santa Cruz or one of those guys, let alone Redondo. But, this Martinez, it is a step up. My opinion is that I think Scott Quigg will probably have enough for the job on the night. I think Kiko Martinez, he's coming off I know he's had a few wins in between, but he's coming off the loss to Carl Frampton. I think, am I correct in saying that he's stepping up in weight class for this fight?
Who's that?
Kiko Martinez?
No, I think he's the same weight because Frampton's at the same weight as well. He fought Frampton at the same weight.
I was under the impression he'd said that he was going to step down in weight class after the Frampton fight, and feeling that the Frampton weight was too big for him, and he was looking to drop one weight class. and he stepped up for this Scott Quigg match. But perhaps I've got that totally wrong. Perhaps
Who
I've just
knows?
imagined that. But
Maybe, I don't know. I can't confirm that one way or the other.
yeah, but I mean, I mean, Kiko Martinez, he's in the autumn of his career. He's been there. He's got a few paydays, and I just think it's like the Joshua White thing. I just sense that the timing is right for Scott Quigg. But Kiko Martinez, the way he fights, so relentlessly aggressive, come forward. Yeah, again, one of these guys who's just generally unpleasant to fight. He could drown Scott Quigg. He could, and we've seen him fights before where Scott Quigg hasn't looked too comfortable when stepping up in levels. So, I would pick Scott Quigg, but it's kind of like a tentative pick, I guess.
I
Yeah.
looked at the fight where Martinez was abroad and he's fighting in America
Yeah.
against that very good champion. I think everyone's tightening to be the next big thing,
Right.
and Martinez went out there and took it to him. And if it's a shootout, I'm picking Martinez. If it's a shootout, I'm
Yeah.
picking Martinez because of that power he carries. He does carry a lot of power, and you've seen Scott Quigg get dropped at domestic level. So you wonder, what is Scott Quigg's chin like at world level?
Absolutely.
And he doesn't
He's
really
another
move his
guy.
head. He's another one from Gallagher's gym that don't
Yeah.
move his head.
I mean, that's one of his biggest issues, Gallagher, isn't it? I mean, none of their guys. I mean, to be honest with you, Ingra, I don't rate any of his stable. I mean, if you look at Crawler, the Smith brothers, I don't see anyone there who's generally world class.
Class.
So I think even Scott Quigg, I've got a paper world champion, but I don't really see him as sort of top three, top four of his division either. I think there's a lot of overhyping that goes on with that stable in general, to be honest.
It could have something to do with his good relationship with Eddie Hearn.
Absolutely.
Eddie Hearn, who says it's almost like a bit of a schizophrenic if you look at him on YouTube, because his one video he's saying, "Oh, Carl Frampton's the best in the world, and he's going to knock out Scott Quigg," and then you look at him again in the same video, he goes, "Oh, Scott Quigg, best super bantam in the world, he'd knock out Carl Frampton," and then he's offering him a check on Sky. So I'm kind of wondering, well, okay, Eddie, who is the better fight between these two guys? I know you've got to do his job as a promoter, but at the end of the day, I don't know. We're going to find a lot more about Scott Quigg, and we know how good Carl Frampton is because he's duffed up Martinez twice.
Yeah. Carl Frampton's a really top level fighter, isn't he? And
Absolutely.
yeah,
Absolutely.
we're not sure about Scott Quigg in that same bracket.
So
Definitely not.
this fight's gonna know. We're gonna know a lot more. We'll know a lot more about Joe Gallagher, and we'll know a lot more about Scott Quigg.
Absolutely.
If he doesn't move his head and he stands in the same place, let me get something straight about Scott Quigg. I don't think he's got zero personality, but as a fighter, I like the way he puts his punches together. He nice 3, 4, 5 punch combinations. I like to see him do that, and I like the way he works to the body. He's putting combination to the body.
Great puncher, isn't he? Really.
See, and the fight against him and Frampton's fantastic because you've got Frampton who throws better head punches, and you've got Quigg who throws body punches, similar to Callum Smith and Rocky Fielding. Rocky Fielding, head puncher. Callum Smith, body puncher.
Yeah.
So they've got that nice ingredient there, those two guys fighting. Whether that fight will ever happen or not, who knows?
I doubt. Callum Smith, in my opinion, is a hype job of the century. I mean, he has got nothing. He's so robotic, so stiff, like no head movement. Limited power to the head. He really he will get horror. If he fights George Groves, they better have ambulances on standby. I tell you. Like, he's just not going to be able to deal with the sort of angles and slickness.
I don't like what Eddie Hearns has said. He's ranked. How is he ranked in the world? He's in the top 3 or top 4 in the world.
Him and Joshua are like second ranked. Yeah, I think he's number 2 WBC as well.
Let me ask you a question. I asked the question, and I couldn't believe it. I said, Sky have done a real good job tonight. They haven't used the word world class. And just at the end, the last 30 seconds before they're ending the show, Johnny Nelson, Callum Smith. He's world class. I'm like, oh no, Johnny, why did you do it? I mean, it's biased. Yeah, and there was a part, Nick appalling. Nick appalling for Sky. He's sad because he's there. He's going, oh, we've never seen Callum Smith get hit back like this before. Yes, Nick, it's called moving up in levels. Oh, he's getting hit back tonight. This is interesting. Yeah, it's called a boxing match. This normally happens when you're not in a 90-10 fight. Yeah.
Used to it, yeah, yeah,
Get used to it. It's gonna, and then you got to think yourself, hold on, okay, Eddie, you're trying to tell me that he's not Callum Smith is number 2 in the world. Okay, maybe he's in the top 10, maybe, but he's better than Andre Durrell. Yeah,
yeah,
okay, right, cool. So he's better than Anthony Durrell. Okay, fine. Better than Badu Jack. Yeah, all right, fine, sure. Better than maybe James DeGale. Yeah, sure, of course. Better than Sakio Bika. Yeah, of course you are. Should we continue? Better than
yeah. It's really
Julius Jackson. Yeah, okay, just go ahead. Fine. I am
yeah.
not so sure.
No, he's definitely not top 10 at super middleweight. Definitely not. It's questionable whether he's top 20. Yeah, he's not. He does the basics right, I
Yeah.
guess, but there's
Nothing else.
nothing more to his game than the basics. He's got the least versatility I've ever seen. I think in a fighter who's hyped this much. He's just a robot, and you turn him on, and he does what Callum Smith does, and that's it. And I think he'll get found out.
Whereas Rocky Fielding, I'm very impressed with him. I think his punch
Absolutely.
power is. You see, he's got a dig. He's got a good
Yeah.
dig.
Yeah, yeah. That stoppage over Brian Vera, it was a horrific chain of events how that fight ended. But taking that aside, what he did to even if you take that stoppage out, he looked like he was going to stop Brian
Yeah, he
Vera.
would have stopped him anyway, and I
Yeah,
said he would stop him. But the thing was, Ian John Lewis was in the crowd. Did you know that? He was
I
actually in the
didn't.
crowd watching the fight. He was in the crowd watching the fight, and he realized, "Oh, I'm a referee. I'm a star referee. Hold on a minute, I've got to stop a fight." It's off.
But no, Rocky looked good. His power's definitely there. And the other thing, I thought his timing was really spot on.
Yeah,
He was
yeah,
timing Brian Vera so nicely, I thought, and I
yeah.
really like that. I think he's got the more upside than a Callum Smith or
Absolutely.
the only at this point. Yeah,
I think also it doesn't help with Paul Smith being on the commentary team. It doesn't help, and I think that's almost like a bias there because they're not really going to say, "Oh, your brother's shit." They're not going to say that, are they? Or
yeah, yeah.
this is an awful performance. And ask me a question: when did Rebrasse become the gatekeeper to the WBC #1 position or #2 position?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, who's your essay ever beaten? I guess is he's got certain things he brings to the table. He's tough, durable, strong. He's got a chin. He can fight for 12 rounds, but fundamentally he's unskilled, isn't he? I mean, he just doesn't have the skills and the defence for a top level fighter.
You're like a walking punching bag that throws a few punches back.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Spot on, spot on. And
Sad to say, but
yeah, yeah,
and I'm not being critical. I'm putting it in perspective to WBC #2 in the world,
yeah.
not in the intercontinental, but in the world. So you're telling me, Eddie Hearn is telling us that this guy is the #2 best fighter in the entire world.
It's crazy. It's crazy. It's got to be to do with the sanctioning fees, hasn't it? The governing bodies want the big names, the Joshuas of this world, to be world champions because they get, I don't know, what is it, 1-2% of the purse
Yeah,
as a
yeah.
sanctioning fee, and obviously 2% of Joshua versus Fury is a lot more than 2% of, I don't know, Gary Cornish if he was #2 in the world.
I mean,
So
okay, if you're gonna put Joshua #2, well, what about Parker? Joshua Parker
oh
a fight?
yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I did a video on that actually on my channel. I think at the minute I've got Joshua slightly ahead of Parker. I think Parker, really exciting talent. Love the hand speed, love the combinations, huge power. The thing with him is he kind of forgets his fundamentals. He's got good movement, he's got good defence, he's got a great jab, but he just doesn't use it. And he consistently gets sucked into wars. And that last fight, I think he fought a guy called Jakob Siglam, and this guy was terrible, but he was catching Parker with such a slow overhand right, like such a telegraphed punch, and Parker knew how to avoid that punch. He knew to get in his bite, but he just didn't do it. And I think unless he starts showing more disciplined performances, I think Joshua's got more discipline. Yeah,
Well, we need to see somebody throwing punches back at Joshua to know if he's got any discipline. Let's be
that's
honest.
that's a fair point. Yeah. I watched the old amateur fights the other day, and when the punches started coming back, he did not look like any slickster on the back foot. I'll tell you.
Right, you can see where he got stopped in the amateurs.
Yeah.
Kind of gives you the idea what he's got bigger, he's got stronger. And of course, there's that story that he got knocked out in sparring by David Price, and that's
Price.
pretty accurate. And then afterwards, if you look at what happened after that, he went and fought a guy called Matt Legg.
Yeah.
But if you look at why he fought Matt Legg now, he shouldn't. If that's true, he got knocked out in sparring. He should never even been in the ring that night.
Yeah. That was on the pay-per-view undercard, wasn't it?
Right. Yeah. So
wanted a bit of star power on the undercard, I reckon. So they wanna, they didn't want to remove him. Yeah.
So Anthony Croller's challenging for a world title. Am I correct?
Yeah, Crawler. It's against Perez, isn't it?
It was on a bit of a. It was on a bit of little. It was a nice little run before he was challenging for the world title. But now he had the injury. He's come back, and I don't know where Crawler is. And
the thing is, like the way I look at it is, let's say we had the best Anthony Crawler ever, right? The best he's ever been. No injury, no burglar incident, nothing.
Yeah.
The best Anthony Crawler we've ever seen, if we're honest, isn't very good. Like he's lost. I don't have BoxRec in front of me, but he's lost several times the domestic level of position. Again, it's not that he does things terribly wrong. He's another one of these fighters who he's got the basics right, but he doesn't do anything excellent. You know, his power's not amazing, his combinations aren't amazing, his punch right isn't amazing. He's not the slickest defensive fighter. He's just, for me, he's just one of these guys who I've kind of pigeonholed in my head. Like him and another example would be like a Tony Bellew. They're just above British level fighters, you know, that kind of operator, but they don't really have the upside to world level. So I think he's going to get found out, I must say. Tony
the Bomber Bellew. The enigma of British boxing. I sat down. I mean, I do like Tony. I don't know if it's, I like him as a charismatic character and want him to win something.
Yeah.
But just something seems. It seems to. I don't know. It's like. It's like. I think the best. I don't know how to describe it. It's like, you know, you look at the trailer of a fight, a trailer for a movie. And you go, this is going to be a brilliant movie. And you'll see the trailer over and over again. And you go, yes. And then you go to see it and go, that was a pile of shit. The best part of the movie was actually that 5-minute trailer that I had that was part of that bit of the movie. Other than that, it was a crap movie, or it had no storyline, or it had a dud ending, or, you know, and with Tony, it's like, always seems to be something missing. Like, question marks, like Dave Colwell. No disrespect to Dave Colwell, but I don't think he's doing Tony Bellew any favours whatsoever.
Yeah.
His right hand, that right hand, I don't know, he throws it, he never seems to connect. And if it does, it's sloppy, he's missing with it. Bellew doesn't fight with any sort of passion. You know, he kind of just moves around and just... I want to see more passion. I want to see him putting punches together. I want to see him some sort of purpose. And I'd like to see Bellew change trainers. I would actually like to see him how he would do with somebody like Adam Booth, who Booth would get him moving a bit more and a bit more, you know, because he's got a decent enough jab and a decent enough left hook, and it's just a matter of, it just seems a bit, I don't know, I'd like to see him, whether he cuts it as a cruiserweight is another matter altogether. When you look at the top cruiserweights in the world, that's a different conversation altogether, you know.
That's the thing. He's one of these guys. He benefit from a division between light heavy and cruiserweight, because for him to be walking around at 200 pounds, I mean, it's not a beauty contest. You don't have to have a great six-pack, but you can see he's carrying a lot of fat on him as he goes to the ring, and he's kind of sluggish. He's not carrying much speed. He's like not very dynamic in the ring, you know. And he makes that Cleverly fight, which was a horrific fight. I mean, of the first few rounds where Cleverly actually was fighting, every jab Cleverly threw, he was landing. Yeah, Bellew just couldn't block the jab, and as you mentioned, he's just wildly inaccurate, isn't he? He's so inaccurate. I know he says he carries power, but the truth is he doesn't carry power. Like,
you tell him that. I ain't telling him that. You tell him that.
But yeah, he certainly carries power compared to me. Don't get me wrong. An elite level boxer. I mean, we saw what Sergei Kovalev did to Nathan Cleverly. That's an example of power. Yeah. Whereas, you know, Cleverly was literally on the ropes, a sitting target for like 12 minutes, and Bellew was so inaccurate, and you know, Cleverly just dodging his head like in and out, and he just was evading Bellew for like minutes at a time. It was
Yeah,
It was
it was
bizarre.
poor. It was grim, wasn't it? It was very grim. I mean, he was like, Trevor's on the right. It's like, please knock me out. Just knock me out. Put me out my mercy.
Yeah,
And he's going.
yeah. It was like it's like
And,
if you ever like like if you ever go to like an amusement arcade, like they have whack-a-mole.
yeah.
Like, like yeah, cleverly would put his head up and Belly would swing like a drunken mess. It was terrible.
Do you know what? He is a character. He's a character, but it's like he's a character, but it just doesn't seem to translate in the ring. That same passion that he has for Everton and that same passion he has at press conferences doesn't translate in his fights. And I just think I'd like to see him with a change of trainer. I'd like to see him with Adam Booth. I'd like to see him with somebody who's going to pick up his feet and get him throwing combination punching. Because this relationship with no disrespect to Dave Colwell, but for me it don't work.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I think again, it's often these changes come after a loss, don't they? And let's be realistic. If Bellew's next fight is against a world champ at cruiserweight, he's going to have a loss. So that's maybe when you'll start seeing the changes, and hopefully he'll make some adjustments and become a better fighter. And you're right. I mean, Dave Colwell, he's not a bad guy in boxing, but I mean, who's he trained at world level? Who's he fought world titles for before? This
is my point. And you're in a position where this ain't like a play school stuff. This is like you're in a position to be world champion, or a position to fight for a world title. You've got a big time promoter behind you, so really do take the extra effort to get in a trainer that's going to actually make you use the best of your abilities. I mean, he's not even using the best of his abilities.
No, you're right. I mean, sometimes at £175, he looked like a decent technician. He looked like he did the basics really well, and he's lost that, hasn't he, recently? He seems to be more of a slugger.
Going backwards.
Yeah.
And that last guy he fought, who the hell was he?
Yeah, he was some heavyweight late replacement, wasn't he? That fight was at a catchweight as well, That was above the cruiserweight limit.
And the thing was, I was watching that fight. I think I was watching that fight and I was uploading the video at the same time. I was going to Belly will get rid of him in a couple of rounds. Round 3, Belly will get rid of him by 5.
Yeah.
Belly saw it. Oh, forget this. Forget this. I mean, and you know what makes it worse? He's in the Creed movie.
I saw that. Yeah.
And I'm like, you're in the Creed movie, and everybody around the world's watching you. Oh, this geezer, Bellew. Or is he not Bellew? Whoever he is in Creed. Who he's in Creed. It's like, he's a professional boxer, is he? Let's check out and see what his last fight was. Oh, shit. Do you know what I mean? At least with Tommy Morrison, remember Tommy Morrison? Tommy Morrison, where it was in Rocky, but at least you knew Tommy Morrison. You look back and see Tommy Morrison had a highlight reel knocking guys out and had charisma and Morrison wasn't the best heavyweight.
Yeah, isn't Andre Ward in the movie as well?
He probably is. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I think so. Yeah. Apparently, Bellew and Ward struck up quite a friendship out there. So it's a bit awkward when they were asking Bellew about Paul Smith versus Ward because he's friends with both of them and he wouldn't pick a winner or something like that. I don't know. It's be interesting when that comes out anyway.
Absolutely. Who else can we talk about? I think I did make a mention about Sergey Kovalev where before he fought Cleverly. I said he'd take Cleverly out within a couple of rounds and people laughed at me. They're not laughing anymore. Kovalev is one serious guy.
He's top level. I mean, I'm a big Cleverly fan. I was at Cleverly's fight, the fight before he fought Kovalev, and I was ringside. And the hand speed of Cleverly, the combinations he was putting together, it was amazing to see from 12 foot away or whatever. But Kovalev, for me, his resume is pound for pound level. And you look at him compared to a guy like Golovkin. I don't understand why Golovkin gets so much hype and Kovalev is forgotten. I mean, Bernard Hopkins, I know he was however many years old, but he was unified champion, top of his, at least top 2 or 3 in his division. Absolutely. John Pascal, certainly top 5 in his division. When he fought Cleverly, I honestly believe Cleverly would have been top 5 in that division as well. And he's looking so dominant, and he's so well rounded as well, Kovalev. I mean, he outboxed the master boxer, in Bernard
Yeah, and
Hopkins.
he could have stopped him early. He could have stopped him early.
He could, yeah,
His concern was, I've not done 12 rounds, and I don't want to gas against a guy like
yeah,
Hopkins. So,
yeah, yeah.
if you looked at the last round, he just put his foot down on him. He said, right, you can have some of this now.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's a
And he could have
tasting
stopped
in
him.
that last
Exactly.
round, wasn't it?
So
Yeah.
that just tells
I
you.
think,
And then he fought
right,
Pascal, and
yeah,
he put some punches on Pascal. He really did.
yeah,
And he took Pascal shots as well. So, I would still like to see him fight Stevenson.
yeah, yeah. I mean, Stevenson can punch, can't he? And I mean, that's the thing. I mean, he's got a chance in that fight. He's a southpaw, the basics very well, can punch hard, but
One
he,
trick
he
pony.
just. What was that? Sorry.
One trick pony.
One trick. Yeah, I mean, he's very predictable, isn't he? And I guess you can look at like success someone like Fonfara had against Stevenson, and and try and work out that John David Jackson could maybe come up with a game plan to expose similar gaps in the game. And I would make Kovalev a definite favourite in that fight, certainly. But it's a
Yeah,
fight I'd love to see. So yeah,
absolutely a great fight to see. Have we missed anybody out currently in world boxing?
I think the one we haven't discussed, Ingram, is Fury Klitschko.
Oh, how could I have missed that out?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
There's
It's
so much to talk about that fight, and it's like, what's interesting about fights and boxing fans? The same fans that will stand behind you and say, this guy's going to be a world champion, this guy's going to be a world champion, this guy's great, love his press conferences, blah, 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 blah. Then it comes to the moment of truth. He has to step in the ring against somebody who is, on paper, better than him.
Absolutely.
And
It's
then
a big
you get the, Fury's going to get smashed. Fury's going to get destroyed. Fury's going to get, and all this stuff you hear. If Fury to win the fight now, the same people that were telling you that Fury's going to get destroyed are the same people that say now Fury's the best heavyweight in the world. He destroyed Deontay Wilder. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah, yeah. It's amazing the bandwagons, isn't it? And how people.
If you think about how far Tyson Fury's come from the days of, the pie check days. Remember the Nevin pie
Yeah,
check
yeah,
days
yeah.
on the Big Fight Live?
Yeah, on Channel 5, I watched that. Yeah,
People can say what they want about Tyson Fury, but he's been tested. He's been in fights where he's been hit back, he's been hurt,
yeah,
he's come back, and he's won fights. He's been tested. He's been more tested than Anthony Joshua. But people are quite happy to put Joshua in the ring with Fury tomorrow. You haven't seen Joshua get hit on the chin. You haven't seen him get hurt. You haven't seen him get off the deck and win a fight. You haven't seen him go abroad and get off the deck and win a fight.
yeah,
You know
yeah,
what I
yeah.
mean?
Tyson Fury's my favourite fighter. I mean, the way I look at him, he does everything right. Great from the outside, great from the inside. Equally good in his back foot. Throws lovely combinations, head, body. All sorts of lovely different variety of punches. He's so disciplined defensively in the recent fights against Chisora and Hamer. I think he does everything well. The one thing he doesn't have, and I'm sure he'd disagree on this, but the one thing he doesn't have is top level power. He doesn't punch like a David Price or a Deontay Wilder.
Good question, but then I think that's not a bad thing because at that size and that height, you will punch with power, but
Yeah,
he's not using power as his one trick pony. If you look at someone like Wilder or even David Price, their big thing is power and neglect boxing ability.
yeah,
Where it's gone the other way of Fury. Fury now has gone to using more boxing ability. Because you look at the first round against Chisora, hit him with an uppercut. And he said, look, I could have stopped Chisora. And Chisora, he looked like he could have stopped Chisora at any time. The Christian Heyman fight, that brought back question marks. I'm thinking, hold on. Whack knocked this guy out cold.
yeah.
And you didn't knock Whack out cold. But then I understand he's boxing to a game plan. Now, do you need to have a big punch to stop Vladimir Klitschko?
In my eyes, I think Vladimir Klitschko gets a lot of unfair criticism.
Yeah.
I think Vladimir Klitschko is actually, this is something that will probably get me a lot of stick for people watching, but I think he's a defensive master at the minute. The attributes he brings, and I know we hate the holding and that sort of stuff. I know everyone dislikes that, but that is a form of defence, in my opinion. And he very rarely takes a clean one, Klitschko. I know Brian Jennings caught him here and there, but did Brian Jennings really land multiple clean punches. There's that one that kind of made everyone's highlight reel. But I think
Right.
Klitschko, he doesn't take a lot. And the other thing is, Klitschko's chin isn't actually that bad. He got knocked out several times over a decade ago, but since then we've seen him. I mean, I remember when David Hay landed clean on his chin. The famous haymaker. Didn't wobble him. I'm not saying Klitschko's got a world class chin. He doesn't. But what I am saying is, it's not as simple as you rock up, throw a 1-2 and he's just on his arse. It's more complex than that. And I think a guy like Tyson Fury, the difficulty here is I actually think Fury could outpoint Klitschko, but obviously with not having home advantage, that's a dangerous game going in there just to outpoint him, isn't it?
Yeah, and he said he said he's not going to do that.
He always says that though. Like, I was at a Fury Chisora weigh-in, and he's screaming at Chisora like he's gonna go out and kill him over one round, and then he boxes to orders like a disciplined southpaw performance. He's going to be very tentative against Vlad, isn't he? I mean, he's going to be very tentative. He's going to use the basics well, and I don't see it being a brawl. They're both very disciplined fighters, the way I look at it.
So the whole shithouse is not going to happen then?
No, it will happen at their press conference, but on the night it'll be a chess match, I think. And I think Fury's got more attributes than Vlad.
He can box. He's got more versatility.
Yeah, that more of us. I mean, Vlad's not going to be able to hold him like he's been holding these 6'3" heavyweights.
Now, if he did hold him, that would be something, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I mean, he's got such long arms, and it's amazing for a guy with such long arms how he can throw short hooks and short uppercuts on the inside. I could see Vlad going in for the hold and actually getting roughed up on the inside, because Tyson Fury is, he's hard as nails on the inside, and I think. The other thing is, Vlad's another one of these guys. He's so reliant on the long 1-2 from range.
Yeah.
And I know he's fought big guys before. Your Tony Thompsons, your Marius Wachs, but Tyson Fury is quite considerably bigger than those guys.
Yeah.
How is he going to cope if Fury can jab him and then stay out of range? Because Fury has got amazing movement for a man of his size.
Yes.
Yeah.
But his footwork is questionable, though.
He's a bit sloppy at times, isn't he? He's a bit ungainly.
Yeah.
But I guess it's hard not to be ungainly when you've got that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you've made some valid points there. But again, it all goes back down to that Steve Cunningham fight.
Yeah.
That Steve Cunningham fight is always in my mind, and it will be in the mind of Klitschko, it will be in the mind of Bashir, it will be in the mind of anybody watching. If you're getting dropped by Cunningham and you're getting dropped by what's the other guy's name?
Pikets.
If you're getting dropped by guys like that, I did talk to Tyson about it. Although he was clowning, he still got dropped by them. And you just ask yourself the question: what happens if Klitschko lands a right hand? And that is, if he can take the Klitschko right hand and he can absorb the Klitschko right hand, we got a hell of a fight.
Oh yeah. It could be, and I mean, Tyson Fury's got the potential to, if he shows his chin at that level, he obviously has the potential to be an all-time great. He's so young. I'm not saying he's anywhere near there yet, but he's so young. He's got so much ahead of him. If he can show that level to take that kind of punch, we could have years of him being a champion. I think. He's so well rounded.
I would rather him fought Wilder, to be honest.
Do you know what? I don't see that as a competitive fight, Ingram. Like, Wilder is just, it's spectacular, the things he does wrong. Like, guys, people were talking about Eddie Chambers Wilder the other day. Like, that fight will never happen. Eddie Chambers would school Wilder, I think. The guy is so flawed, isn't it? I mean, he makes mistakes that I wouldn't make outside a pub on Saturday night. Like, it's terrible.
I'm not saying anything. I think people have heard my opinion, and I'm not saying anything because Deontay said he doesn't care very much for me outside of boxing or inside of boxing. So I'm not going to say anything else. I will let everything unravel as the way it is. He did seem to have a problem blocking the left jab. That's as much as I'll say about that.
Yeah.
I didn't know how to block a left jab, and he has tremendous power. Well, how's he got tremendous power is the question.
That's a yeah. I mean, he's got good power, but it's unclear whether he's got tremendous power. The other thing is his stance is horrific. You know, he's such a tall guy, but he gives up his height because his legs are so wide apart, and he loses the ability to move. He can't react quickly to movement, and he can't be light on his feet because his stance is so wide. And when he gets you hurt, I mean, then the way he rushes in, I mean, he hasn't shown any improvement from that Audley Harrison fight. He's still making the same basic errors. And you know, one day if he fights someone really smart like a Tony Thompson or an Eddie Chambers, you know, someone really with a lot of ring savvy, he's going to land a big punch, rush in, and a trap's going to have been laid for him. I'm convinced about it. You know,
It's only a matter of time. I spoke to Bermain Stavern yesterday, and that interview will be coming out soon. He wants him again.
he's with is he with Heyman now?
No, I don't, like still with Don King, Bermain.
Really? You sure about that?
I don't know.
I'm pretty sure I already signed with Heyman, but again, I got disclaimer. I may have got that one wrong now, but
Okay.
yeah, he was too bad to be believed in that first Wilder fight. But on his day, Bermain Stavern's a good fighter. I think he
Yeah,
brings a lot
absolutely.
to the table. Yeah,
Absolutely. I just want to hear your thoughts on, before I finish, Bryant Jennings. How do you view him in the heavyweight division?
I thought it was 2 months too soon for Brian Jennings that fight. You know, he struggled badly, in my opinion, against Mike Perez. That fight could have gone either way. He did well against Spilka, but he struggled badly against Perez. And I just thought the way he got hit by that Perez jab, the way he dropped the early rounds to Perez, I thought it would be very easy work for Klitschko. And I was actually impressed by what he brought to the table. He showed a lot of heart. He showed a great chin. I thought your interview with James Ali Basir was extremely revealing when he was talking about the corner work of Klitschko and how Klitschko maybe could have done a better job against Bryant Jennings. And I think that's a valid point. The way I look at Jennings now, in terms of a style of fighter, I view him as similar to a David Haye, the way he fights, very athletic, mover, tries to sort of stay out of range and rush in, you know, ambush opponents. My concern is he just possibly lacks the elite level power. And I see him being a solid top 10 competitor, but I don't necessarily see him having the levels to beat Vlad, to beat Fury. You know,
What
I see him
about
just
Wilder versus Jennings?
I think I've made Jennings a favourite in that fight. I think the success he was having against Vlad suggests that he could possibly deal with the Wilder jab. And I think that Wilder would panic more than Vlad did when Jennings got on the inside. I also think we've already talked about Wilder's power, but you know, it's less proven than Vlad's. And the way Jennings was able to stay on his feet against Vlad tells me he'd probably be able to stay on his feet against Wilder. So I'd make Jennings a favourite in that one. What about yourself?
I definitely would. I think I've
Yeah.
always said that. I've always believed Jennings could beat Wilder.
Yeah.
I think you see, Jennings has fought the best heavyweight in the world.
Yeah.
And that's we still Tyson Fury still an unknown quantity. Deontay Wilder's unknown quantity. The only consistent quantity we know is Klitschko. And over a 10-year period, Jennings is put in there was in 19 fights he had.
Yeah.
You know, and he did well against Klitschko. If you think about, he did better than David Haye. I think he did better than Povetkin, because Povetkin most of the time was.
Yeah.
You know, so you think about the challenges. He did better than Pulev.
Definitely.
So if you're gonna put Jennings, you've got to put him in the top 5 in the heavyweight division.
Absolutely, yeah. That's a very good point. He did better than all three of those guys, and I know David Haye's like a bit of a odd one, but yeah, Povetkin would Pulev, David Haye, if they were active, they'd all be considered top 5 heavyweights. And you're right, he did better than all of them. So yeah, he performed with real credit, and yeah, hopefully there's some big fights out there. I'd like to see him have a comeback soon enough. Don't want him to be too inactive.
Absolutely. And a final point: there's something about this bid that was made for the Klitschko Fury fight, and there seems to be a dark cloud over that, and there's even a dark cloud whether the fight is actually going to happen. Do you know, have you heard anything about it yourself?
I've got a few theories on it. I mean, my understanding It's this guy, is it Vlad Hurov, who's the
Yeah,
Russian promoter? So he was with Frank Rambers.
yeah,
He's got a co-promotional agreement for Ustinov. They worked together to put Bulioni Chudinov. They worked previously for Ivan Chudinov. These are guys with some sort of relationship. Now, my understanding is that Vladimir Klitschko was playing pretty hardball in negotiation, threatening for the fight to go to purse bid, etc., etc. And because of the political situation with Ukraine and Russia, Vlad didn't want to fight in Russia. This is all sort of, this is not factual here. This
yeah.
is just what I'm hearing. So what could have happened is this Hurinov, who, as I say, works very closely with Frank Warren, turned up with this ridiculous overbid to try and scare Vlad into thinking that the fight might be going to Russia, and therefore mean that the two parties came to some sort of 11th hour deal rather than letting it go to purse bids.
Right.
I wonder if Team Fury was so scared of Eddie Hearn winning the purse bids that they sent this guy out there, who's kind of like a friend of a friend, if you like, to kind of put the fear of God into Vlad. He'd have to fight in Russia again and make him more amenable to last minute negotiations. But your guess is as good as mine, really. That just kind of
Eddie
works.
Hearn, what was Eddie Hearn playing at? Do you really think he was serious, or do you think he just wanted to be there because he was just Eddie Hearn?
So he sent someone out there, didn't he? And I read that he prepared, was it a 9 million bid for it?
Yeah.
And the truth is, I think Eddie Hearn was serious because, let's be honest, he's got so many targets from Sky on his back about pay-per-views.
Yeah.
That's a definite pay-per-view fight. And 9 million euros, 9 million euros is a lot of money. It's about 8 million quid.
Yeah.
But actually, if he sold 80,000 seats at Wembley and got a pay-per-view that did 500,000 buys, that's actually a profitable investment. That's sensible business.
Yeah.
So I think he was being serious, and I think we're going to see more and more of that because of these pay-per-views that he's going to be looking to put on.
So Sky Sports look like they may be getting a fight.
Really?
Looks so. Bern Bonte says it's going to be on Sky, so if he says it, then
That's interesting.
we're going to have Jim Watt commentating.
I heard Peter Fury do an interview with you, Ingram, where he said that he wouldn't fight on Sky again.
Yeah, I heard about that as well. So that's going to be very interesting, isn't it?
Yeah. I think they had a big issue with some comments made by Adam Smith around the Hay fight, if I recall.
He did indeed. He did indeed. But and in that process, they moved to Box Nation. So who knows?
Absolutely. I might try and go to that fight actually if I can. I think that would be a great day out.
If it even happens in October, I have doubts it's going to happen in October. Real doubts. I think Vlad's going to pull out. I think he'll rearrange at some other time. I think he'll play Fury as much as he can. I can't see the fight happening in October. If he does, brilliant.
The thing is though, Vlad pulling out, Tyson Fury, he's a guy who's still in his sort of mid-20s. He's not even at his prime yet. Whereas Vlad is very much in the autumn of his career. Is he 38?
39, yeah.
If he delays the fight for another 6 months, obviously that's going to play with Tyson's head massively. But for me, it's not a bad thing, to allow Vlad to get another 6 months older. Maybe Vlad that comes to the ring 40 years old. The time is running out for Vlad, not for Tyson.
Yeah, that's true. That's a very good point. Tom, it's been great talking boxing with you.
Likewise, Ingram. Thanks very much. Enjoyed it.
Is there anything you want to say to the people, or the people are watching or listening in, or?
Well, thanks very much. And if you want to follow me on Twitter, I'm at Boxing Gossip, or have a look at my YouTube channel. But no, thanks very much, everyone.
That's Tom from the Boxing Gossip. It's been fantastic having you.